We are on the cusp of a decision in the Karen Read trial. Karen herself said last week the defense would rest tomorrow. Today, continued testimony from the defense's crash reconstructionist from ARCA, Dr. Daniel Wolf, defending the use of crash dummy testing. He says there is no way Karen Read's SUV could have struck John O'Keefe. We're joined right now by Melanie Little, New York lawyer with over 30 years experience as a trial attorney and litigator, who's now a legal analyst and commentator. She's following the Karen Read trial live every day. You can follow her, follow it. Hello, Melanie. How are you?
Hi, Billy. How are you? Thanks so much for having me.
I feel like I know you because we watch so much of this stuff. You're on it like crazy. I love watching you on it.
I'm so glad that you're on it and you know so much about the case, which is so exciting because, long time, first time, let's just say.
Long time, first time.
The feeling is mutual, Billy. The feeling is mutual.
I'm so hooked on this thing, I can't get over it. I don't know why. I mean, we're all like most of us are justice warriors, right? When we perceive a massive injustice, we're like, wait a minute, what? And I kind of just got off the Blake Lively. I don't know how you feel about that, but that's a different thing. I feel like there's an injustice being done over there. But on this front, and by the way, welcome to all you've got so many people that follow you during this whole thing. So many of them are here. And I just want to say hi to everybody who's in the Melanie Little camp and welcome. We love having you here at Hot Mics. So what'd you say, a good day for Karen Read today?
No, today was actually, they moved for a mistrial for the second time with prejudice, Karen Read's team, based on some egregious misconduct by Hank Brennon. Again, this is the second time they've moved for a mistrial with prejudice during the course of this trial. And Hank Brennan's behavior just seems to get more and more egregious and abhorrent with every single day that goes by. He's treating every single witness that comes to the stand with complete, he's been badgering them. He has been complete and total disregard for each and every witness. It's an abomination, Billy. I know you've been watching the trial. You can chime in on this as well. But after what Hank Brennon did today, trying to mislead the jury into thinking there were holes in the back of John O'Keefe's hoodie that could have come from contact with the motor vehicle for the car accident that didn't happen, misleading the jury, showing the hoodie, it's in between plexiglass, and then during the break, the defense team goes over, takes the hoodie out of the plexiglass, and we find out that there are holes in the back of the sweatshirt. Those holes were cut by the Massachusetts State Police criminalist who has already testified for the Commonwealth. Hank Brennon has, remember the prosecutorial misconduct in the Rust trial in New Mexico for Alec Baldwin and the way the judge just tossed that case out of court? What has gone on here is so much more egregious, in my opinion, than that. And here we sit still. This judge continues to allow Karen Read to be railroaded. It is outrageous. People should be outraged because Karen Read could be any one of us. Alec Baldwin's a celebrity. It got a lot more hype. It got a lot more publicity. And Karen Read is any one of us. And this is this should not be going on in the United States in 2025. It's horrific. It's horrific. And the world is watching, and this judge doesn't seem to care.
What everybody who is following you on this trial is united in the fact that Beverly Cannoni, the judge, is just egregious, bought and paid for. She's getting killed in your comment section. I mean, the problem with the whole thing, like if you speak for the prosecution, to me is it's really hard to imagine, and yet I believe it actually happened, that so many people would get together and tell a lie together. Like it's just like isn't it amazing that all these people and they're all and none of them are going to crack. No one's going to break.
Have you heard about the Catholic Church scandal? Because I handled those cases too. And so when I tell you that a secret can be kept for decades by a lot more than 10 or 12 people, secrets can be kept for decades. I live in New York. We know corruption here. Have you heard about, if the mafia existed, which, people say it doesn't. People can keep secrets to protect their family. I'm not accusing anyone of anything. But what I'm saying is something happened to John O'Keefe and it did not involve a motor vehicle. So
right,
when
it's
a big enough,
chatter, the repercussions are so big here for the entire state of Massachusetts and its entire law enforcement apparatus that, I mean, this is a house of cards that would come tumbling down. Maybe that makes it a little bit easier.
Yeah, I mean, the twisted family tree roots of Massachusetts are just that. And it goes way, way deeper, I think, than the Karen Reed case. People who live in Massachusetts are mad as hell and they're not going to take it anymore. And they will tell you that this corruption has been going on in Massachusetts for decades. And Karen Reed is just the tip of the iceberg here. The FBI was investigating this investigation, and the investigation goes much deeper than just Karen Reed. I mean, you can see that in DA Michael Morrissey's emails to the feds, where he ramps up and ramps up and ramps up and wants to know what they're investigating. The FBI was investigating not just this investigation, but several other things, which also led to the indictment of Matthew Farwell for the murder of Sandra Birchmore, which coincidentally, Canton PD and MSP, a lot of the same, ruled a suicide, and now he's he's in federal.
So you're saying this is a house
holding.
like, if this thing goes against MSP and law enforcement, then watch out. What's next?
There's so much more going on here.
This is incredible.
This is just part of it.
Are you surprised that the Bryans, Brian Albert and Brian Higgins, two the butt dialers, that they, neither them nor Michael Proctor were ever called by either side in the second trial? Does that surprise you, or is it like, I mean, to me, the defense might say this is so obviously bad, we're just going to take it for granted that people understand how shady these two are, and by not doing it, you're basically doing more. Maybe that's their strategy, and the prosecution knows we don't want either of these bumbling fools on there again.
Well, Brennan didn't mention Michael Proctor, I think, at all in his opening statement, right? So he's running as far away from Michael Proctor as he can. He got Yuri Buchanan to come in and testify about everything that he says that he and Michael Proctor did together. Michael Proctor, his text messages were brought in through another witness, and a lot of his egregious behavior was brought in other ways. And so, it's a strategy decision. Do you bring Michael Proctor in and give him the opportunity to try and defend himself? And because remember, if you call him in as the defense team, you can't cross-examine him, but it gives Brennan the opportunity to cross-examine him. So I think the defense focus this trial, we're calling it season 2, is John O'Keefe was not hit by a car and a car did not hit John O'Keefe. The judge has already ruled that they can't bring in third-party culprit defense on Colin Albert. He's out. So I think the focus has to be on the science, on the physics. John O'Keefe was not hit by a car. The injuries don't support that. The damage to the car doesn't support that. And
the dog bites.
And the dog bites.
The dog bites, to me, are everything. I mean, if I had to pick one thing, it all comes down to that arm right there. I don't care how fast a car is backing up, a Lexus is backing up, what shape the taillight is in. There's no way, to me, it leaves marks on the arm like that. Those are clearly from some type of animal attack.
The Commonwealth wants the jury to believe that John O'Keefe's arm shattered that taillight. It magically exploded into 47 pieces, and all at the same time scratched his arm to look exactly like dog bites. It is under the laws of physics and science, impossible. Dr. Wolf from ARCA has already testified about that, but not about the injuries, but about the arm shattering the taillight. And then his partner, Dr. Rentschler, is going to testify, I believe, tomorrow to tell us that the injuries to John O'Keefe's body could not have been caused by a motor vehicle traveling in. They keep changing their theory, by the way, how many feet in reverse at 24 miles an hour it was in the first trial. Now they're not really telling us the speed. It's just physically impossible that his arm would not have been shattered or bruised. He would have had other injuries to his body. For those who are not familiar with the case, maybe they don't know that there were no injuries below the neck to the body of John O'Keefe other than those arm injuries that Billy just showed in the photo. And anyone who's ever been hit by a car as a pedestrian knows that a car will leave bumper marks. It will leave injuries below the waist, to the knees, to the legs, to the hips, to the ankles. It's just physically impossible under the laws of science and physics that the body would not sustain much greater injuries. Something happened to John O'Keefe that caused a massive head wound, skull fractures to the back of his head, which radiated to the front of his head, many brain bleeds and brain hemorrhages. And we heard some testimony a little bit about that today from Dr. La Posada, who's another medical expert for the defense. She's a medical examiner with 40 years experience. Hank Brennon has stomped his feet and whined and tried to keep out every single expert, tried to hamstring the defense at every turn. And look, an ethical prosecutor is going to want to look for the truth. They're going to want the jury to hear all of the evidence so that they can come to the finding of fact about whether or not John O'Keefe was hit by a car. They are not going to turn around and try and hamstring the defense and try and keep out every single expert that the defense wants to put on, because it should be a search for the truth. It should not just be looking for a conviction. And I think the more people that are watching this are seeing the blatant disregard for the truth. And as Alan Jackson said infamously in his opening statement in season 1, they just wanted to pin it on the girl. Michael Proctor had this case solved within 16 hours. He called to tow Karen Reed's car from her parents' house in Dighton before he ever went to the scene at 34 Fairview, before he ever saw that taillight.
There you go. That's it. And we all saw the car back up, and how it cracked its taillight. We see that. How it turned into a smashed taillight. We've seen that. 42 minutes of videotape missing from the Sallyport garage. As 42 minutes of Michael Proctor behind with this taillight. How can that be gone? Where did it go? Same place as the dog, somewhere else. The dog is gone. The Bryans are butt dialing in the. There's so many things. Are there other slam dunk moments for you that are just like that you could almost isolate out, that if they stood alone would be enough to exonerate Karen?
I mean, look at there's no chain of custody for any of this evidence, right? There are inverted video, the inverted Sallyport video that was shown in the middle of the first trial, which could have resulted in a mistrial right away, but no, it didn't. In fact, Yuri Buchanan testified, oh, yeah, well, that's a fair and accurate representation of the way the Sallyport looked on the day in question. And it wasn't until cross-examination that he pointed out, yeah, well, it's like mirrored, like everything that happened in the video, but, it's just like everything is backwards, like when you're looking in a mirror. What world are we in, Billy? We're in the Twilight Zone, Narnia
How do you say
Matrix.
Ambulance backwards? I don't remember, but I've seen it before.
Yes. The missing video, the what clearly looked like dog bites to the outside of that sweatshirt. There's holes in the sweatshirt. Where's all the blood from this head injury? Why is there blood all the way down the front of his clothing if the only injury was to the back of his head? So many things.
So many inconsistencies. Melanie Little is with us right now. She's got an amazing following here as she covers the Karen Reed trial. She's got 30 years of experience in her own right doing this, although you only look about 30, so you must have started as an infant. But Melanie, look, the one thing that's bothering me, too, I haven't heard too much about, just a little rumbling, is Kelly Deaver.
Don't call her Deaver, Billy.
Deaver.
Dever.
Dever.
Her name's Dever, and she attacked Alan Jackson for that.
Kelly Dever, who was very rude to Alan, very rude. But her huge pay raise from 2023 as a cop, she made $85,000, and in 2024, she gets $143,000, a 67% increase in pay for Kelly Dever.
Well, she went from Canton PD to Boston PD. She was rehomed too, just
she
like
was
Chloe,
rehomed.
now Cora. And then she gets called down to the Boston Police Commissioner's office. That was perhaps the most surprising part of her testimony, is that she was called down to meet with the commish of the Boston PD. She's like 23, 24 at the time.
Kelly, you're doing a terrific
alone.
job, a great job, and we all want to honor all the hard work that you've
Do the
done.
right thing.
And here's a giant check, and shut the hell up. All right.
I mean,
she's not going to win Miss Congeniality anywhere. She is very, very tough. She was so rude.
Veruca Salt. People are calling her Veruca Salt.
So what happens here? I'm so fascinated. So tomorrow we think the defense will rest in the end. They're bringing their big finish right here. More on reconstruction, right? More to
Maybe. Well, there's motions out there because Hank Brennon is fighting everything. And so the motions are taking a long time. And so we're going to hear from Dr. Rentschler, who's the other, we call them crash daddies from ARCA. They were originally hired by the FBI because, they're easy to look at, the crash daddies. So Dr. Rentschler is going to come in and talk about how the injuries are in no way related to this car accident because his arm would have been shattered, I imagine. This medical examiner wants to testify about the dog bites and the car accident injuries. The judge is not really allowing it. And then, of course, Hank Brennon is going to be allowed to put on a rebuttal case, which, again, we're in the twilight zone, to call back that Judson Welcher who did the paint experiment. I'm sure you saw that.
Yeah, the Blue
that was
Man.
fun.
Yeah.
It was like Nickelodeon. And then he's going to call a dog DNA expert and a woman who swabbed the clothing. And then we'll have closing arguments, maybe by the end of the week. I don't know.
And then 12 people are going to say that she's guilty. I don't think it's possible. So I wonder, do we think that at that point, like OJ, we're going to go look for the real killer, or is it just Karen is let off either by mistrial or hung jury? Likely hung jury. I'm sure it would be the best situation for prosecution and for the state of Massachusetts. A hung jury would be great. And now let's walk away and drop it because we've tried twice. And now we don't ever have to really look any deeper. That would be the best case scenario for them. For obviously for Karen and the defense, that all 12 people say she's innocent and she walks. What do you think is going to happen, and will there be any follow-up case to see what actually did happen to John O'Keefe? I'd like to know.
I'd like to know too. I don't think they're ever going to let it go. I think they would try her a third or fourth time because that is how far deep in and they've been known to do that in Massachusetts. The investigation was so poor from the beginning, and no other suspects were ever investigated. That will there ever really be justice for John O'Keefe? It's hard to say unless somebody flips and somebody knows what actually happened. The investigation was so poor that I don't know that anybody else could ever be tried for this murder, because it was a murder. Maybe it was an accident, but the crime could have been in the cover-up. Will that happen? I don't know. You've seen public division on this case, I'm sure, because you're covering it. You've seen the public vitriol that's out there for anyone who thinks that John O'Keefe was not hit by a car. And the public is so divided on this that I just don't know if 12 people will ever be able to agree either way.
I think of Jack Nicholson. You can't handle the truth. I mean, like, can the state of Massachusetts handle the truth if the truth comes out that it wasn't Karen, therefore it was someone in the house? Let's go to the chat section here. Steve is in our control room, and he's going to pull up something here for Melanie.
Yeah, so Susie's watching, and Susie wants to know who's been the best witness and maybe the worst witness for Karen Reed.
The best and the worst witness, Melanie.
What do you think, Billy? So for Karen Reed, I mean, we're not done yet.
I thought Judd Welcher was terrible for the prosecution, the Blue Man Group. I thought it was a joke. I thought it was a sideshow, and he was their big finish. I mean, this was this was the crescendo. It built up to this reconstructionist who said, and then because of this blue paint here, he hit me off balance, and he rolled like this off to the side, somehow ended up 10 feet on the lawn. He's tried to stick the landing, and to me, it was a giant anticlimax. That guy.
Oh, yeah, that guy. Shannon with one end, Burgess. No, that was Judson Welcher. I'm sure. I'm thinking of Burgess, the other one.
I thought he was pretty bad.
I think the state's medical examiner was an excellent witness for Karen. She did the autopsy on John. She is the only witness, and she was a Commonwealth witness, the only witness
who examined
the body of John O'Keefe. And she said she did not think that these injuries were caused by a car accident because she examined the legs. She opened up the legs. There were no fractures to the legs. She also has the cause of death as undetermined on the death certificate to this day. She has not ruled it a homicide. I think that we are going to see Dr. Rentschler, who is going to tie everything together and talk about how physics and science will prove that these injuries were not caused by a car accident, because if it's happening the way the Commonwealth says, the injuries would have been far, far worse.
Yeah. They're painting too perfect a picture. They're saying not only did the car back up, but it actually caught him at this just exact moment and off this arm, and then he spun over this way and that way. You need a video that shows that actually happened. You need the guy's video camera from across the street, the retired cop and his Ring camera. Of course, that's not available. But if that video was there, you'd need to see something like that. You're painting a 1 in a million chance situation as, that's of course what happened.
Right. And they don't have that. But it's funny because media was originally told there was Ring camera footage of the incident, which is like everyone heard that and thought, oh, wow, that's a tragic accident. But they've got it on Ring camera footage, and it turns out that they don't. I think the best evidence the Commonwealth has, even though it means really nothing, are these interview clips of Karen's that they have been playing throughout the trial without any context. And they're trying to say that they're admissions of Karen Reed. Look, there are people who do not like Karen Reed because of her facial expressions. So if there's one of those people on the jury, they're going to point to those interviews and say, look, she said this, she said that, and she's got a facial expression, and she mocked Peggy O'Keefe, and so therefore she must be guilty. Unfortunately, that's the way some people think. The red Solo cups, that was like some crazy evidence for Karen Reed, the leaf blower. But again, the defense is being hamstrung. They're not allowed to call a procedural expert in police procedure to show how bad the investigation was.
I think the worst thing for Karen Reed is the fact that she's texting Brian Higgins, "You're hot, you're wicked hot." When did you think I was hot? Oh, from jump, I thought you were. It was so hot, the whole thing. And she kissed him and the whole thing. I mean, you and I can admit Brian Higgins. I have to say this every time. He's not hot.
He's not. And you know what? That's why the one reason I wanted to see him come in and testify, so that the jury could get a look at him and say, oh, yeah, she was totally yanking his chain. There's no way she thought he was hot.
But we don't like her for yanking the chain. She's no princess. I mean, what I'm saying, Karen she's being, I think this is, she's being maligned and railroaded and the whole thing. But I mean, the fact that she was flirting with this big lug, while she was with the great O'Keefe, who, what's lost in here, I like O'Keefe. I mean, he seems like, if I had walked into the waterfall and I had seen O'Keefe, I'd have thrown my arm around him and, bought him a couple beers. Thank you for your service, Mr. Officer, and have a drink. He seemed like a good guy. That's what's lost.
He did.
Here.
Seemed like a good guy. During the first trial, and I don't know if you watched the first trial, but there was all this evidence about an incident that happened in Aruba where Karen walked into the lobby. They were on Aruba, and he may or may not have been a little handsy with one of the women there. And so Karen was mad about it, maybe still, and she wanted to get a little attention from Higgins.
Yeah, she didn't trust him. Yeah.
Soothe her ego a little bit. But apparently he doesn't know the bro code, and he was going after his friend's girl. So there's that too. Right? Like, where's the bro code, Higgy? Where's the bro code?
Higgy, baby.
He's got no game, this guy. He's a simp.
There's a guy, the guy on a golf course yesterday. People come up to me all the time about this trial and all the other things. This guy says to me, he goes, "Hey, Billy Bush, I got to talk to you." He tracks me down. He goes, "Do you think it's possible that, like, maybe kind of both things are true?" And I have entertained this at one point where, like, the car might have bumped him like a teeny bit, or he stumbled into it. And then he goes inside and says, "Oh, you guys aren't going to believe, fucking Karen's so mad at me. She backed up. She hit me with the car, the door," or something like that. And then when they beat him up or whatever happened to him inside they remembered, he told us that she had knocked into him. Is that possible in the end? These are games that we play. They're non-evidentiary, but in the end, we're all going to be left wondering what the hell exactly happened.
Yeah. I agree.
There's theories everywhere. I don't know.
I agree. They had the theory that or at least the ARCA witnesses built a cannon to shoot a cocktail glass out of the cannon at the taillight. Because that was originally the feds didn't really tell them anything other than, what if a cocktail glass was thrown at the taillight, and they built a cannon and they said it was awesome. And that is pretty awesome. But explain the dog bite injuries to me, and explain rehoming the dog and selling the house, and Brian Higgins and Brian Albert destroying their phones on the exact same day and getting new phone numbers, and Brian Higgins cracking his SIM card in half and then throwing it in a military dumpster on a base somewhere. And
that's also
this is all stuff the jury's not hearing about this time, which
I just think I can't imagine that this jury, doesn't know anything about the first trial. Everybody in that state knows everything about the first trial, so maybe that's already logged, permanently logged. Melanie, I know where I saw you. I know where I've seen you before. It was at a Dave Matthews Band concert.
I'm sending you a sweatshirt.
I think I might have seen you there, maybe at a Dave Matthews. All right.
Awesome.
Melanie, thank you so much. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Billy. Appreciate it.
Watch Melanie watch the trial. Watch it with her. She's just she's constantly commenting, sniping. She's watching you, Bev Canoni, Judge Bev. You watch out.